Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the NBA Front Office Show, Tuesday, November 21st edition. Got plenty going on in the NBA. We've got the tournament continuing tonight. We'll have tournament play. We'll have the super bright floors that I am indeed getting used to. We'll be in action tonight. A lot of news to dive into as well. Keith, how are you doing? And did you see the response to our food discussion to start yesterday's show?
I didn't. I didn't. I'll have to look at it. I did not have much of a chance after it posted to go back and look at the comments. I'm sure people were extremely kind.
Well, there were some people that were contending that the pie crust is one of the better parts of the pie
Yeah.
itself. So there were surprise, and then there were people that were encouraging me to man up and just eat the whole thing by myself. And you know what? I'm thinking I'm saving that pumpkin pie for Thanksgiving. I don't think I'm going to be able to do that if the task is to eat the entire thing. I might have to start tonight. I'm
Yeah,
going
have
to
a
have to
piece
start
tonight.
tonight if there's
Yeah.
a shot at it.
Yeah, why not? Right? During the Lakers are playing tonight, right? I think they're
Yeah.
playing the Jazz in a tournament game. Yeah. Just enjoy a piece of pie tonight. You've earned it.
I'll do the play-by-play while I'm eating
There you
pumpkin
go.
pie. That'll work
And the
perfectly.
people who only watch that will be like, what is happening here?
Why is this happening right now?
Then you could be like, if you want to know why I'm eating pumpkin pie, subscribe to NBA Front Office Show.
There you
See?
go. There
Yeah,
you go. We can
marketing.
get the plug in there. Get the
Yeah.
plug in. All right. Well, I think tomorrow we'll do some turkey fun facts and things like that to get ready for Thanksgiving. But for today, oh no, we've got injury news to get in.
Ugh.
We've got some other stuff too. But let's talk about the injury stuff first. Let's go. Bradley Beal has nerve irritation going from his back down his leg. Uh, that's not good. Ben Simmons is out dealing with nerve irritation right now too. This is no bueno for the Suns, for Bradley Beal. I don't know how long exactly this is going to keep him out of action, or what this is going to be moving forward. But typically, nerve stuff is a bad sign.
Yeah, and this came from Shams Charania reporting on the injuries and that Beal's going to be out for at least 3 weeks. And well, what's going on? It sounds like he had an assorted in various injuries that caused this issue, but it is going down into his legs. And obviously, for a player who is heavily reliant on his jump shot and his ability to change directions and the like, that's not great. So he's probably going to have to get that really handled. And what you worry about now is, let's say he is back in 3-4 weeks. Is it going to pop up again? Is it going to be something that comes back, after a handful of games and those kind of things? I know I've talked about it before, but anytime it's a back injury, I always think of Larry Bird, because at the end of portion of his career, he'd come back, he'd look amazing for sometimes 2-3 weeks, and then something would tweak, and then he'd be out for a week or two, and then he'd get back and he'd look good again, and something would happen. And he was one of those guys who spent the latter part of his career, probably some of the people remember him with the Dream Team, lying on the floor whenever he was out of games, because he couldn't sit in the chairs because his back would tighten up on him. So he'd lay on the floor and then get back into the game that way. So we'll see what happens with Bradley Beal. Hopefully it's nothing near that serious, and he'll be able to get back and be good, because that Suns team is built around having Durant, Booker, and Beal. And when you don't have them, they're just never going to be the team that they hoped to be. They're still a good team, still a playoff team, but they're not going to be a title contender without all three of them.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's something that is going to be, it's going to be a challenge for the Suns if they can't get him back to full health. But you know what? There's a lot of people who are saying, well, yeah, I mean, Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, and Bradley Beal all have lengthy injury histories. So of course you're gonna have stuff that's gonna pop up. You're probably, I mean, Keith, what did you say it was? You were at 50 games, maybe
50
that all
games,
three.
yep.
And
Now
has that
way
come
under
down
that.
now?
Yeah, I'm down like around 40.
Yeah.
Now at best. Yeah. And then, just since we're talking something that, could this persist? It's worth remembering Bradley Beal after this season. So after this year, 3 more years, $161 million.
With a no trade clause.
Yep, with a no trade clause and the and a player option on that final year. So not great. Really not great for the Phoenix Suns. That is not a place you want to be.
No. Yeah, definitely not. Matt Ryan out 10 to 14 days. Laker legend Matt Ryan.
Celtics legend too.
That's right. Out 10 to 14 days. Keith, before we came on here, it was funny. You said typically we wouldn't report on a two-way player, but since he plays all the time, we got to make sure we throw him in here.
Yeah, absolutely. And he has been playing a lot for the Pelicans. He's already played in 13 games this year, which that's a lot for a two-way player, averaging 22.9 minutes per game, 46% from the field. A robust 47% from three on 5.2 3-point attempts per game, 9.3 points per game. Really has blossomed into a regular guy, and a guy who I would think would be a leading contender to be converted to a standard roster spot. That wouldn't happen until much later in the year after the Pelicans. They're just over the luxury tax line right now. They're certainly going to make a trade or two or whatever they need to do to make sure they don't pay the luxury tax. But the most likely move is Kira Lewis gets moved from there, and in some kind of salary dumping type of trade that gets them under. Then they could convert Matt Ryan. But yeah, 10 to 14 weeks with a mild calf strain.
Days.
Yeah, 10 to 14 days. Yes, not 10 to 14 weeks. That'd be like the season.
Yeah.
So yeah, but 10 to 14 days for him. So yeah, about 2 weeks. Generally calf strains, it's closer to the longer end of the time frame. So we'll see him towards the beginning part of December and back. And then we'll see the other thing. We'll do an update on this probably a month or so from now. Some of these teams are starting to eat into the two-way days already. Like we've got teams that guys have been on the active to roster and playing, like Matt Ryan. He's not the only one. There's a handful of guys every single game.
And it was so 90 is the max?
50 days, 50 games.
For an individual player, but combined it was 90, right?
I forget. I'd have to go through it. That might be right. I'd have to run through them. But any individual players, 50 games they can be active. So it's not 50 games played. It's just 50 games on the active roster. So if we're, 12, 13 games in, some of these teams are already eating into that two-way amount quite a bit. So we'll see what happens at the end of the day with all these guys, just with that. But it's too early to do that now. It's just something I'm keeping a little bit of a running tab on.
Keith, I have a new name for the Memphis Grizzlies. The Boo Boo Bears. because they just cannot catch a break. They are so hurt, so very, very hurt. This team, they have everybody, it feels like, is injured. You've got Steven Adams, of course, John Morant suspended, Brandon Clark, Marcus Smart. Now Luke Kennard has got stuff going on. What is this team is falling to pieces, Keith?
Yeah, I mean, it really is gotten to ridiculous portions. They played the Celtics the other night, and I had my former Celtics blog colleagues, a handful of them were like, all right, who are these guys?
Yeah.
Who are they playing? Because they were playing a lot of their two-way guys, a lot of their end-of-bench guys.
Xavier Tillman even. Injury management stuff. Tillman
is also out, yeah. So what's going on with Luke Kennard? He has a bone bruise in his left knee. That's at least 2 more weeks for him. Xavier Tillman has an injured left leg. They've been a little kind of cagey on what exactly that is, but they said he's week to week. With an injury, so not even day to day. And then we covered it yesterday. Marcus Smart's out 3 to 5 weeks with a sprained left foot. Derrick Rose is still in and out of the lineup. And at this point in his career, he's not a guy you can rely on being there every single night. So they're just going to have to get through it. Now, what I do wonder for Memphis is, are we in range of starting to look into, all right, some of these things are going to last a lot longer than a handful of games. Are we going to start looking into, can we get hardship exceptions and get extra spots in here? They, as we talk right now, they are 8.4 million under the luxury tax. So eating a couple more guys on contracts, that's probably not the end of the world. They'd probably be able to work around that if they need to. That's a good amount of wiggle room if they wanted to make a trade where they took on money later in the year. So that becomes, all right, we're going to be watching this. Do they need to make a move or two to just get bodies in the gym? Because this is a challenge. Like, I'm sure their practices are even limited right now because there's only so much you can do.
Yeah, can they even play 5-on-5?
These guys? Yeah, I don't know. It's pretty close. I mean, because even like a guy like Jake LaRavia, he's been in and out of the line.
He's got an eye issue
too. Yeah, so you're really down to, let's see, 11 healthy players right now. And a couple of those guys, like Santi Aldama was hurt earlier this year. Zaire Williams has had a couple stints with injuries. So you're probably not wanting to push them too hard. So, yeah, I'm sure their practices are at most glorified walkthroughs, which that's generally the case unless you've got a couple days off in a row at this point in the NBA season. But still, you're in a rough spot if you're Memphis.
So and when you're talking about 11 healthy players, that doesn't mean it's 11 guys that you necessarily want to have be major
Correct.
pieces of your rotation too. And so that's something to factor in. You mentioned they're 8 million away from the luxury tax. I don't think they're at this point quite yet, but I do wonder if this continues. Even once Ja comes back, do we see the Grizzlies around the deadline become more of an opportunistic trading team where they're absorbing a salary for somebody or something like that, realizing that, hey, we're probably not going anywhere this year. Let's get a high draft pick and then let's regroup for next season.
Yeah, I kind of wonder that too. They've got some tradable guys too if they wanted to just kind of even out their books a little
Yeah.
bit more, because this is a team that they're projected to be pretty expensive next season. Because remember, Desmond Bane, he's on 3.8 million this year. That jumps to 34 million next season. And potentially more if he hits some of his bonuses. So this is a team that next year projects to be about 13 million over the luxury tax. So you're pushing up against being a second apron team as it stands right now. Now we'll see what happens with guys like Luke Kennard and in the like with some of the options, and they do have Kenneth Lofton Jr. as a non-guaranteed contract, so it can create a little bit more wiggle room. But you're a lot closer to being that second apron team. So I do also wonder, could they do a little bit of pre-agency where it's like, let's make a trade now that we maybe won't be able to make in the summertime and those kind of things, because this might be last chance saloon time for them to add real salary? Or do you let's shed a little bit of the salary, create even more wiggle room for ourselves under these under the tax aprons, maybe even all the way out of it and under the tax entirely? But right now, as it stands, they are going to be one of the more expensive teams, and that's more expensive coming off what looks like it could be a pretty down and lost season.
Yeah, it really does. And it's unfortunate to be at that point this early. You know, I mean, this early on to already be talking about a lost season for the Grizzlies. But I mean, like John Morant he can't get back fast enough. This team is just they're sinking, and they just don't have the players. They don't have the players. So many guys are out hurt. I'm hard pressed to think of a team that's been hit this hard with injuries. There's teams that get hit pretty hard with injuries every year, but man, it feels like everybody on this team is just banged up. It's crazy.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, a Zach LaVine trade likely to happen. Likely if it does happen. I shouldn't say likely to happen. If it does happen, it more than likely will take place closer to the trade deadline, which is what we've said. For logistics reasons, in terms of more players being available to be traded around the NBA, we talk about that December 15th date. And just the fact that most trades, especially for big star level players, they don't happen until closer to the trade deadline because, well, that's when teams get the most serious. That deadline creates urgency, and that gets teams to be a little bit more direct with their offers, a little bit more realistic. What we hear often is in December, yes, teams start to call each other a little bit, then they kind of go away for the holidays and stuff. And so those December talks are often like pie in the sky discussions. You know, it's, hey, we want everything, this, that, and all that kind of stuff. And then you get a little more realistic in January. And then by the time the deadline's there, okay, both sides give a little bit. And then that's how ultimately you either reach a deal or you don't. So even if it wasn't for the whole players available aspect of this, it's still more likely that a deal is going to go down closer to the deadline rather than sooner on in the year. But also when you add in how many, I believe it's 25% of the league becomes trade eligible on December 15th, somewhere in that range.
Yeah, it's about 27%, but yeah, okay, you're right there.
So that makes it just much more possible to actually get a deal done. So no surprise that it's going to be more of a deadline thing, even though it's been a big topic conversation. It's not happening tomorrow or anything.
Yeah, and we're also in a spot, then you'll have another additional 30-ish guys will become eligible on January 15th. Those are guys who re-signed with their team, got a big raise, and their team re-signed them using a form of bird or early bird rights to re-sign them with. So those guys have a lengthened no trade period with that. So, and then we're down to very few guys have the kind of no trade clause this year, we didn't see a ton of 1-year contracts for players who would have bird rights at the end or early bird rights. So we didn't see too many of those. And we saw, as we've noted several times, a handful of players, which is a new thing in this new CBA, they waived those no trade clauses. So that adds it all up to where big trades like this, $40 million salary, major star, all-star level guy being available. That's going to be, you're talking, I think, a mid-January type trade at the earliest. But to your point, maybe closer to the deadline, just because you may have the Bulls may hold out as well, saying, let's see what else comes available. Maybe it's not the best offer right now. Maybe we can hold on a little bit longer and we get to that trade deadline, and then we get the big trade there.
Right. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about Amazon. We've heard the NBA may be looking to split up their TV rights. Some of it may be going digital, some of it, to streaming services. We know Amazon already has Thursday Night Football. In their effort to get NBA content on their streaming service for Amazon Prime, they may want the NBA playoffs. Now, I'd assume they would not be able to get the entire NBA. I guess if they
I think it would just be a portion.
It would be a portion, but still, I mean, we're still talking about a scenario where, in order to watch NBA now playoff games, you've got to have cable TV, right? You got to have ABC or NBC or whatever. I guess that's just TV, right? Plus, now you got to have an Amazon Prime subscription in order to watch it. Some games it's League Pass. Some games are blacked out. I'm talking during the regular season, where again, Thursday Night Football has worked out just fine with Amazon, but again, we're talking about having to bounce around to a bunch of different portals to be able to find NBA games.
Yeah, I continue to say I'm fine with if you put these anywhere. I just want to be able to switch channels without having to switch like devices that I'm actually watching these games on. Playoff games, I get it. The reaction to this doesn't seem to be great on social media. A lot of people are kind of replying with like, no, I shouldn't have to pay to watch a playoff game. They're like, if I want to watch, hundreds of regular season games, and watch games out of market and all these other things, I get that I need to pay for, but people feel like, hey, the playoff games, that should be accessible to me through the let's call it the traditional method. So I get it. The quote from Jay Marine, who's the head of Amazon Global Head of Sports is his actual title. He says, would something like the playoffs be an important part of our bid? Yes, I think that's fair to say. And then when he was asked, why is it that Amazon's even interested in the NBA, he said, what fits is it is one of the biggest leagues in the world and people care about it. At the end of the day, do Prime members care about it? Is it important to their life? And as a result, can it be meaningful in terms of the value it adds on to Prime members and the Prime program? I think with the NBA, it is true on all those fronts. So clearly they're going to make a run, right? And may make a real run at trying to get the rights to these games. So it's going to be interesting to watch how this plays out. I do wonder, is the NBA going to give and say, all right, we'll give you some playoff games too? Is it going to be, all right, you can have first round series games on Tuesdays.
Yeah.
And the 2 Tuesdays in the first round, you'll get those. I don't know. We'll see what that looks like. But there's definitely going to be new ways we're consuming the NBA. And I just hope at the end of the day, people can get to what they need to get to with as much ease as possible. And, that's the best way it works out.
All right. Yeah. We'll see how that all happens. And again, we're a little ways away from this, but this is obviously something that we're going to keep an eye on as we see what the NBA does with their TV rights that are coming up.
All right. As we talk any of this stuff, the NBA right now they're the only people they can negotiate with are the current partners, which are is ESPN, Disney, ABC as one group, and then Turner Sports as the other group. They cannot negotiate with Amazon. They can't negotiate with anybody else. So that's tough. Hey, we have a little bit more injury news, unfortunately.
What
is it? Comes for one of the league's very worst teams. I'm trying to get it to pull up so I'll be able to read it. The Bojan Bogdanovic. So good news on this part. Bojan Bogdanovic is coming back and has been cleared for full practice. So close for him. Jalen Duren is also back. He had a right ankle sprain, so he's now back to practice. So those two guys are
Okay.
good news. Monte Morris, bad news though. PRP injection on Friday, the 17th, so roughly almost a week ago. Rehab a right quad strain. He'll be reevaluated again in 6 to 8 weeks. So
Wow.
that's a rough loss for them, considering they could use all the help they could get.
Yikes. Yeah, that's tough for a Pistons team that's been struggling. And again, I think not having Bogdanovich is a big deal for them.
Yep.
Not having some of their veterans out there, and Morris is certainly one of them. Not having these guys to sort of steer the ship for them, it's been a problem, and so things just keep getting worse for Detroit. But this team could still. Do they need to? I've seen the conversation out there on social media that Detroit maybe needs to do a mini reset, not obviously a full rebuild, but a mini reset. I don't. They've got a number of young players. It's just kind of messy right now in
Yeah.
terms of where like their path forward isn't as clean as some of the other youngish teams that would be considered in their kind of bracket or whatever in the NBA.
Yeah, the only way you're resetting, I get you could trade some of these veteran guys, and that's
Yeah, that's
probably
all
on
you
the
can do.
table anyway. But if you're resetting, that means you're probably then saying, all right, a handful of these young guys, we don't believe in them. And I think it's too early to pull that trigger. I just think it's like you said, it's messy. I don't know that they've drafted the best fitting guys together. So I think that's a little bit of a challenge there. So I think that's something they need to definitely look through and work on and try to find better fits, because right now that is definitely a problem with the way all those guys kind of come together. They've got an awful lot of bigs. They've got a lot of guys who can't shoot. That's a issue, and very clearly stands out when you watch them play.
Right, right. All right, last thing we've got the Knicks and Raptors lawsuit. The Knicks reportedly seeking $10 million. They had a former employee who left New York and went over to Toronto and sent over a bunch of files and plays and scouting reports, all kinds of stuff, like thousands upon thousands of things got taken from the Knicks and given to the Raptors. Keith, this has the potential to get messy here. Typically, we don't see this kind of stuff result in a lawsuit, but I don't know where. In some ways, this is kind of unprecedented for the NBA. You don't really see teams file lawsuits on each other.
Yeah, we also got a little bit more detail on why is there a lawsuit? Why wasn't
Yeah.
this just a complaint to the league office and let the league office handle it? And one of the things the Knicks are saying is Adam Silver is not the appropriate guy to handle this because I believe it's Larry Tannenbaum is
Mhm.
the Raptors representative on the board of governors. He is a part owner of the Raptors. They're kind of corporate owned
Mhm.
with as an entity. So in this case, Larry Tannenbaum is the he's very close with Adam Silver. Adam Silver has called him a mentor. Adam Silver has also often said he is their boss. I think people forget Adam Silver oversees the entire league at the behest of the NBA owners. He works for the NBA Board of Governors. They
Mhm.
hire him. They are the ones who can also fire him. So in this case, Larry Tannenbaum is, I believe he may be the chairman of the board currently. These things change sometimes, but that's why they filed the lawsuit, was because they don't feel like they could just take this. In addition to that, James Dolan, the owner of the New York Knicks, has resigned positions on the Board of Governors, Advisory and Finance, and Media Committees. So that's, we just talked about the media rights are coming up. He has come out, and what he said when he resigned his spots on those, given all that has occurred lately, I've come to the conclusion that the NBA neither needs nor wants my opinion. And then he said, my hope is the Knicks will be treated equally and fairly as all other teams. As you know, I'm very busy with all my duties at MSG's family of companies. I need to apply my time where I can be most productive. He also is now no longer attending the board of governors meetings anymore. He is now sending their general counsel Jamal Lassane is now the Knicks representative in board of governors meetings. So that's a lot to say. This is very ugly. The Knicks obviously now have a high level of distrust in the league, and that they would handle this appropriately. This lawsuit, you talk to anybody around the league, most people are like, this seems a little frivolous. Like, this doesn't seem like it's something that most people don't do and what he's alleged to have taken, none of it seems like overly like secretive and confidential.
Yeah.
Seems like he took synergy clips and signed into his synergy account and all those things. So definitely wrong. And the Raptors should probably be fined for this and those kind of things. This is probably going to drag out a little bit and probably get increasingly more ugly as we go.
Well, I've seen a lot of there've been a lot of the fan response. It's been kind of funny. It's been, why would you steal from the Knicks?
Yeah,
Right? Like, wouldn't you like if you could get a hold of like Eric Spoelstra's plays or something like that? Like
right.
that is not a different story.
Sure.
But any slights to the Knicks aside, I think you're right. I think it's a lot of the stuff that we're talking about. People act like all this stuff is so secretive and everything like that. Teams scout other teams all the
Yeah,
time. Teams have all kinds of info on other teams. It just because they got a hold of the Knicks plays or something doesn't mean they got anything they didn't already basically have, right?
exactly.
I mean, scout, like, go to a game, and if you go and you sit next to a scout, they're just sitting there writing out. They just, and by the way, great basketball minds, obviously, and they can just read the game, and they're just marking down. They ran this play. Next, they ran this play. Then they did this. Then they ran this. This was freelance. This, and just by the end of the game, they've got a tally of everything that a team did and everything they ran, all the plays they've got, and then with synergy and all that, you can go and look and see exactly how teams
Usually
are running everything.
what they usually do is they'll come with a call sheet,
Yeah,
so they'll hear what they hear. Most teams give it's this is the job of the advanced scout for as far as game planning
yeah,
stuff goes. The advanced scout sits generally fairly close to the bench. Then they mark down the call sheet, and then what they do is they provide it to their team's video coordinators, who will then mark it against. Okay, so the play call was thumbs down,
right.
and thumbs down equal all right, they're running a floppy action on the right side of the floor and these kind of things. And it's not, we don't do a ton of X and O's on this show, so we won't get too deep into it. But that's what thumbs down was. Or some teams they're like run UCLA, and it's like, all right, they're gonna run a series where they set up for UCLA cuts and those kind of things. And that's the job of the advanced scout and the video coordinator to put that together. Then they get that to the coaching staff, and then the coaching staff says, okay, so if the team is sloppy, and let me be fair too to the teams, it's not always just sloppy. Sometimes it's, hey, we don't have time to change our play calls every game
Yeah,
because we played last night. Now we're playing tonight. We don't necessarily have time. Sometimes it'll be, all right, hey, we know we scouted them or they were all over this action last time we played or whatever. So it might be in shoot around that day. Hey, what we're gonna do is we're gonna, call it anytime we mention a California school that's run the UCLA series or whatever it is, right? It's going to be, they may have tweaks like that, hey, if they don't catch on, it goes, it goes 3-4 ways. The advanced scouts will do all the stuff. So to that point, everybody's all over this. This seemed more like it was like scouting, like player type stuff, like more on the front office side
yeah,
of like, hey, we really like what this kid does. But again, if it's pulling clips that are available to anybody listening to this, if you have enough money, can reach out to Synergy and pay for a Synergy subscription.
yeah,
Like they're a company that provides data, and really good data and ways to get it. Their primary clients being NBA teams, but anybody can pay for it if you really wanted it. So it's not that it's super proprietary. I'm not entirely sure. I don't think it was like, hey, here's what their free agent game plan is for 2020
right.
4, 5, 6, and 7. Like that's a little odd. Like I'm not entirely sure, where all this is going. Other than this is a very, very ugly thing, and now we're finding out some of the why did we not just go to the league with a complaint and let the league handle it? It's because they don't trust that it be handled appropriately.
Yeah, which again is not a good look for the league in general.
Correct.
If one of its teams doesn't trust that the league is going to handle things. So again, this is something we'll keep an eye on, and see ultimately what happens. I would be surprised if it winds up being $10 million or whatever, but nonetheless, this is something that's happening, and we'll
Hey,
see where it all leads.
one more thing before we
Yeah,
wrap up, because we talked about it being an in-season tournament night. Your Los Angeles Lakers can become the first team in the history of the in-season tournament to clinch a spot in
they
the
could.
quarterfinals because they're playing their final game. They're undefeated in the group 3-0. This game really decides it. or can decide it, I should say, because the Jazz, I believe, would have no. I guess this is it for the Jazz too. So this game will decide it between the Lakers and the Jazz. Because I don't think the Suns can get in there. I don't know. Maybe the Suns are some weird tiebreaker, but if the Lakers win, they're through tonight against the Jazz, and if the Jazz win, they'll have a chance to maybe be the ones through instead. It would probably get into complicated tiebreakers at that point. And just a reminder, you want to win your group because that assures you one of the 8 spots. 6 of the 8 spots go to the group winners, and then the other 2 will be the 2 best wild cards. And it's very likely to come down to nothing more than point differential at that point. So it's going to be fun to watch. I mean, there's a layer of importance tonight, right? There's actually something to fully be played for in this game between these two teams with, a real chance with some stakes on the line. So that'll be, a fun game to watch. I think it's the only one too tonight, right? Yeah, it's the only late game tonight.
Oh, it's the only late game. I was going to say, it's not the only tournament game.
No. Yeah, there's, 6 of them, 5 of them tonight. So, and there's a couple other big ones. Magic Raptors is a big one. Magic and Celtics play Friday in the tournament. So Jazz Lakers though, that's a big one now. So it'll be fun to watch tonight.
Absolutely. There'll be something that obviously I'll be watching, but we'll certainly be keeping an eye on. That's why I would imagine LeBron, even though he's questionable, I'm sure he's probably going to play this one. Adam Silver would probably not be happy if he did not. But so it's the tournament so far so good, and we'll see if the Lakers become the first team to punch their ticket into the next round. But thank you, everybody, for joining us. Make sure you do subscribe to the NBA Front Office Show here on YouTube, and of course over on the podcast side, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever it is you listen to podcasts. Till next time, everybody. See ya and stay safe.